is a technology company that focuses on three key areas. A key one is security, and another aspect is visibility. And lastly, we also support testing of your networking and the security infrastructure. In my role, I'm responsible for all of the positioning, the messaging, and the communication of our information to both our employees as well as to our customers. Now, I've been in the networking and the security business for about 20 years, so I guess that shows a little bit of my age, despite the nice photo. And previous to this, I was the Chief Marketing Officer at Checkpoint Software Technologies, which is the largest firewall vendor out there. So I've been in security and marketing security for quite some time. And then prior to that, I was at Cisco, where I was their VP of marketing for all of their enterprise, wireless and mobility, as well as their security portfolio. From my background, I have an engineering degree that I got from the University of Toronto in electrical engineering, and then an MBA from York University. So I've been one of those fortunate people that has worked in technology and is able to understand the technology to translate it into good marketing and communications for our customers, and really try to simplify what we are talking about when we communicate to customers. Now, one of the things I wanted to cover here is an aspect that a lot of times is neglected, and that is marketing's role as it relates to cybersecurity. There's a famous saying by Warren Buffett, who's one of the richest men out there, that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And this is so completely true when it comes to any of the enterprise or service provider or consumer companies, and how they react if they are breached, what happens if they are attacked, and more importantly, because everyone does get attacked, more importantly, if they are breached, how they respond to it. If you think about it, in the last year, 2015, there were so many attacks, so many breaches between, for the last 3 years, I would say every year it keeps escalating. And no one is safe, whether it's healthcare, whether it's retail. I believe last year it was, pretty much every, at least in the United States, every healthcare major insurance provider was attacked and breached. So the reality is everyone is exposed, and what you need to do is really understand that there's a high likelihood you will be attacked, that you will be breached, but more importantly is what steps have you done to protect your company and to protect your brand. And the issue is a lot of times people don't understand the impact that this can have on the relationship that you have with your customers, and the effect that it can have specifically on the value of your brand. And so one of the key areas that cyber attacks go after is the personal data and personal information. And I believe we're really at the beginning of how that personal data will be utilized by cyber criminals. Today, a lot of them are just trying to target your personal data so that they can get into your bank accounts and scam you for money. But you just don't know how it could be used in the future, how they could in turn leverage that for blackmail, for other bad opportunities that they can direct at the end customer. And given this, the CMO and the marketing organization sometimes just is not aware or does not get that terribly involved with the cybersecurity strategy of a company. Now, if we look at some of the examples that have happened in the last year, Target, for example, which happened in 2014, they really had a significant erosion in their brand, because not only did they lose data, but they saw a drop in the number of customers that were using Target. So 1 year after, they saw a 10% decrease. That's really significant if you think of them as a retailer. eBay is another one from an e-commerce standpoint. Their CEO essentially said that after they were breached, that the users were a little afraid to use them and they experienced a drop. So it's pretty significant in terms of both revenue and reputation when you are breached and you lose that customer information that's very valued, that your customers depend on you to protect them from. So I was saying, what can a chief marketing officer do? Now, historically, the marketing organization haven't really been involved with the information technology organization and the security department in particular. But the issue becomes that more and more we're moving into a digital age, and so much of our communication and our customer information is all digital, and marketing in many ways is getting that information from customers as they send out their marketing material. They're working with marketing automation systems that gather that information. They're using social media to communicate different aspects of strategies, etc. And the reality is that now more than never, marketing needs to actively join forces with IT and with security in two ways. One, to make sure what they're doing is protecting the customer data and ensuring that they're not exposing information in a bad way. And two, also making sure that should breaches happen, that the company has the right strategy in place to respond to them. Because in many ways, how we react to a bad situation is really how our reputations are created or destroyed. Now, one of the things that a lot of marketing leaders don't realize is marketing are innovators. They get excited by the new thing, the new software, new ways to reach customers. But a lot of times, because they're not always very technical, or some are not, they come from different backgrounds, they may not realize that that new software that they're using may potentially have some very significant security leaks. And a lot of times, because marketing is not so tightly integrated with the security department, they tend to fly under the radar. And so they will use all kinds of different applications without necessarily getting the go ahead to say this is acceptable for use in an organization. And I've seen this at a variety of companies that I've been at, big or small. And so this unfortunately does create a risk in the security strategy. And now we're seeing a lot more companies showing up that protect these venues that a lot of companies hadn't even thought about. For example, there's so much impersonation that's going on, for example, on things like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, where someone basically takes on the identity of an executive from a company, and they basically send out messages that could be misleading, etc., on the company's social media because it's not necessarily as well protected as some of the other enterprise capabilities. Other things that are going on is a lot of times people try to impersonate and get into systems by sending emails as if it's coming from an executive's private email account. Many of us have our company email, like mine is mhattar@ixiacom.com, but I also have my own personal email that I share with friends, etc. Well, some of the latest trends that we're seeing in terms of this is hackers coming in and assuming identities of these so-called executives and creating havoc within enterprises. So what does a marketer, what do they need to do in this? Well, first and foremost, they need to really make sure that whatever data they're touching, whether it's customer or partner data, that it's protected. And that as a CMO, that they really need to start thinking of security as an extension of their job. They need to make sure that any new applications that they're bringing in don't introduce risks, and that they are part of the company's applications that are verified and checked by the security department. Now, sometimes, it's a double-edged sword, because sometimes I tell we don't want you to use this application, and the marketing department will say, no, I really want to. Well, as in everything security, it's always about balancing that risk. What is the potential exposure with what is the benefit? The other key aspect of this is that marketers really do need to stay up to date on some of the cyber breaches and what's going on, so that they can recognize if it's actually happening to them, and if it's putting their customer data and brand reputation and value at risk. A lot of times, marketing can have a very influencing role at the C-level to ensure that the company has a strategy as part of their crisis planning for cyber breaches. Many times, companies, they'll worry about fire, they'll worry about earthquakes, they'll worry about a lot of the physical crisis that could happen. They worry about financial crises, but many companies don't actually put in place a cyber attack crisis planning, and what should they do and who reacts. They assume it's all taken care of in the IT organization, but the reality is there's a whole communication mechanism that can take place and needs to be built in, and planned is very key. So from a marketing perspective, it's really important for a CMO to actually get involved in this development of this communication and ensure that they have a rapid response for when an attack does happen. And there's nothing like preparation and having all of this done in advance, and actually doing scenario planning. What happens if this? What happens if that? And how do we respond? How do we react? That really helps companies be prepared. And so that would be my advice for a lot of the marketing organizations out there, a lot of my peer CMOs, is it's really time for us to get a lot more active in cybersecurity. It's really important for us to understand the risks to our partner and our customer data. Another key aspect of this is really to make sure that customer data is protected. Now, what that means is that they use encryption. So, for example, a lot of the websites out there are still not using HTTPS, they're just using HTTP. So, for a lot of the marketing professionals to take that extra step, it is work, it is more effort, but it really does help protect your customers and your brand. And really, it's important to get involved with the IT teams to understand what platforms they're leveraging, where there may be. The challenge is most hackers, the way they can get into an organization is usually associated around the handoffs. When you're transitioning from one platform to another, when you haven't fully put in all the patches for any bugs. And CMOs are not, as I said, don't necessarily know all infrastructure. They just trust that whatever application is secure, they load up all their data to it without really checking whether it is or not. And so I think it's important that they do engage much more with the IT organization to understand how well their data is protected. And if you think about it, there's other facets of this that are also important. We talk about using in marketing, we love the digital age. We love how we can use social media like Facebook and LinkedIn. It's very cost effective to reach a lot of customers, whether it's through our advertising or just through our communication. But it's also a way that cyber criminals can exploit personal data. So one of the things that marketing needs to educate their teams on is in somewhat being careful and the types of posts that the executives and the team members put in. There's been many an incident showcased where someone knows that sees certain people from a mergers and acquisitions organization showing up in a certain city, and they're posting on their Facebook pages that they're in Atlanta or some other location, and it really causes in some ways a leak of potential M&A activity, or of the fact that they may be looking to purchase someone or sell something. So I think it's really important that as marketers, employees become aware that as they use these social mediums, as they communicate their whereabouts and what they're doing, that there are business ramifications. And again, you can't stop everything. It's just like your children. You can't be watching them all the time. What you can do is provide the guidelines and educate people, and hope they use the right judgments in terms of how they share information, and how they communicate across these different media. And so one of the things that I do want to touch on,
I'm sorry,
yes.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you for a second. We have a couple of people having audio issues. I just don't want them to miss the message. So if you can hold on for a few seconds so I can figure this out.
No problem.
Marie, can you continue? I think that it's fixed.
Okay, great. Do you want me to repeat anything or just keep going?
I mean, if you could go back to the last idea and finish it, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what.
If you could, okay, yes, it's fixed. If you could just mention your last idea, just from the very beginning, your last point you were mentioning, and then that sort of like to make a continuation on that.
Okay, so I was talking about the fact that in marketing we love to use social media. We love Facebook, we love LinkedIn, and as marketers we need to help establish guidelines in our companies, because we could inadvertently be leaking customer data or information about our company across those social media without realizing it. And so this is one of those things where I think marketing can join forces with IT and understand what are the ramifications, and then establish guidelines to employees so that they know that a lot of times what they post on their personal pages does have an impact on the company and how it relates to the company. And that unfortunately cyber criminals are everywhere, and they're monitoring a lot of venues should they decide that a certain company is a target for them. And marketing has a responsibilities, and CMOs as well, to ensure that they protect that reputation of the company. The other piece of it is it's inevitable that at some point or another a company will get breached. And this is where it becomes really important that marketing is involved and has a plan, because too often companies stop security intrusions too late, and they don't respond quickly. Communicate. Marketing team is really key in this part to ensure that they have the crisis management training, to ensure that they keep the customers updated and aware of what's going on. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have been on an airplane where you're sitting on the runway and they just don't let you know what's going on, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and it's a very frustrating experience. Well, it's no different in a company if you've trusted them with your data and you don't know what's going on. So it's really important that companies be very proactive should anything happen, make sure their customers know what's going on, make sure they understand what steps they're taking to mitigate, and be very transparent of the impact of what the breach is, as opposed to trying to hide it, because it's inevitable that it will get exposed in some way or form. And so marketing really has a very key role here in developing that strategy, and ensuring the communication channel happens. And then lastly, what I'd like to share is that as marketers out there, this is not something that's top of mind for most marketers. We love to talk about advertising. We love to talk about brand. We love to talk about demand generation, and how we use digital to help us drive revenue to our companies. One of the things I want to advise other marketers out there is this really does need to be a topic and a conversations for marketers to start engaging in, because it's a very important facet that can protect your brand and can ensure that all that hard work you're doing in advertising and in brand building does not get deteriorated through mistakes. And so, with that, really concludes what I wanted to cover today on the role of marketing and security. And just want to reiterate that as CMOs, we need to always be aware that the customer information and our brand image are always under attack, and that we need to have the response tactics and the data protection to make sure that we're protecting our company. And should we get attacked and be breached, that we have the right response to make sure our customers are aware and know what steps are being taken to mitigate this and how we can help them. So with that, I'd like to thank you and open it up for any questions.